Hi everyone, it's me, Spring, the fiber enthusiast. Welcome to my channel. So as you've seen in the title and the thumbnail, we'll be making this hat. This is my pattern and we are going to be making this hat as part of a set for wings in September 2022. So what are you going to need for this hat pattern? Well, we're going to use knitting needles and we're going to use two sizes. I'm going to be using these circulars and I will start with a 4.5 to do the brim. Then I will move up to a 5mm. You'll also need a needle to sew in those ends, and potentially some stitch markers. Those are always good to have on hand, especially one for the beginning and between the beginning and the end of the round, so you can kind of keep up with those rounds. You'll also need a pair of scissors and of course some yarn. I used Feels Like Butter for this particular hat, and for today's tutorial we're going to be using a tan beige color from Red Heart Super Saver and also an ocean color from Karen Simply Soft. So grab your favorite 4-weight yarn and contrasting colors if you like. If you wish to do it all in one color, that is entirely up to you. I'm going to go ahead and get this stuff out of the way so that way we can get started. Grab the smaller of your two needles. Okay, so once you have the smaller of your two needles, you're going to take, if you're using contrasting colors, I'm going to be using the beige as the brim and the ocean as the body of the hat. So with the contrasting color, or color A, we're going to cast on 89 stitches. Now the pattern calls for multiples of 11. However, the way that I connect in the round, I always cast on one extra stitch. So go ahead and cast on however you wish, whether it be long tail cast on or some other fashion of casting on. Go ahead and cast on those 89 stitches. Okay, so once you have your 89 cast on stitches, here's what you're going to do. You're going to, from the side with the beginning tail and the working yarn, you're going to slip that stitch from your right needle to your left needle. Then you're going to take the last stitch prior to slipping the stitch, this stitch here. You're going to take that stitch and pass it over the one you just put on that needle. Then you're going to take that stitch and put it back on your left needle. Tighten up your tails. Now your working yarn is back on the right needle and you have decreased by one stitch. Now place a stitch marker showing that that is the end of and beginning of a round. Now just simply do a 1-by-1 rib stitch. What that means is knit 1, purl 1. Continue doing that all the way around, and you're going to do that for 13 rounds. Once you have 13 rounds of knit 1, purl 1, ribbing, brim stitch, we're going to change over to our color B, our contrasting color, and begin the pattern, the hat pattern. All right, go ahead and work on that brim, and I will be back in a flash before you know it to help you out with the body of the hat. Okay, so now I have my 13 rounds of 1x1 ribbing. I'm gonna go ahead and cut loose from my color A. Give myself enough room to sew in the ends. And I'm gonna grab color B, my contrasting color, and make one complete round of just knit. So go ahead and do that. You should have 88 stitches when you get done, and I will meet up with you once I have come all the way back around. Okay, so we have finished one round with the contrasting color, or if you haven't changed colors, you have finished one complete round of just knit. Now we're going to switch over to our larger needle. Again, you don't have to switch colors, but let's switch from our 4.5 to our 5mm. And we're going to do that on our very first round of our 4-round repeat. Round 1 of the 4 rounds is actually your pattern. The next 3 are just knit rounds. So very, very simple to complete this. So for the first stitches, I need this out of the way and need to be able to connect right here. Okay, so here is how the repeat goes for the first round. Purl 2 together 2 times, which this first stitch is going to be a little bit tight because I've got it tied to the tail from color A. All right, so we're going to pull that off and cinch it up. Okay. Now I'm gonna swivel that around and get it inside so it's out of my way now that I'm past that first stitch. All right, so now we'll purl the next 2 together, just like that. Now we need to yarn over and knit 1 3 times. So that was 1, yarn over, knit 1, 2, yarn over, knit 1, 3. Now you yarn over and purl 2 together twice, 1 and 2. That is your repeat all the way around. We'll go through the repeat one more time with a little bit closer of a view. Okay, so move your yarn to the front and purl 2 together, 1, purl 2 together, 2. So you're going to do that twice. Then you're going to yarn over, knit 1, 1, yarn over, knit 1, 2, yarn over, knit 1, 3. So yarn over, knit 1 3 times, and yarn over, bring your yarn to the front, and purl 2 together twice. So that was 1 and 2. Go ahead and complete that all the way around, and I will tell you what to do for rounds 2, 3, and 4 when you have completed round 1. Okay, so I've made it all the way around, and I am now fully on my 5mm circular knitting needles, completely off of those 4.5s. I've transferred my stitch marker over, and round 1 of the 4-round repeat is complete. Rounds 2, 3, and 4 are as simple as this. Knit every stitch all the way around. So go ahead and knit the next 3 rounds, and then repeat round 1 of the repeat rounds, and I will put a timestamp down in the description box to go back to the beginning of this round we just completed. Okay, so looking at this, we have completed round 1 of the 4-round repeat. I will put a timestamp down below so that way you can go back to the beginning of round 1 for a refresher if you need it to complete the round. So you're going to have the round that we just did, 3 rounds of knit, the round we just did, 3 rounds of knit, and you're going to do that until you are on round 33. So go ahead and finish that, and I will meet up with you when I am up here at this point, and then we will start those decrease rounds together. Okay? Okay, so here I am. I have finished my 8 repeats and the first round of the next repeat. So if I'm looking at what I have here, I have my first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and then right here, 9th. Okay, so now we're going to start decreasing for the crown of the head. And I just grab a handful of stitch markers, and remember, it's not necessary for you to have stitch markers. If you don't, typically use them, that's perfectly okay to not have them. If you don't have stitch markers and you would like to, follow along with stitch markers, you can take a piece of yarn, just a small piece of yarn, and fold it in half, then tie it in a knot, and now you can place that on your needle as a stitch marker. You want to use a contrasting color so that way you don't accidentally knit that stitch, because it's not a stitch, it's a stitch marker. But it's very simple to do just a piece of yarn as a stitch marker. All right, let's get into stitch marker placement. This first round of the crown is going to be knitted all the way around. We're going to knit 11 stitches, place a stitch marker, and repeat that all the way around. Now, I know that this is my beginning stitch marker, so I'm probably not going to use these that look similar because I want this to be different. Now, I could use a red one to indicate stop, and that way I know that that's the actual beginning. But let's go ahead and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Okay, so you have 11 stitches now. Place a stitch marker and continue all the way around, just knitting 11 and placing a stitch marker. I will return when I have made it all the way back to my beginning stitch marker. Okay, so once you've made it all the way around, including your starting stitch marker, you should have 8 stitch markers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now, if you're not using stitch markers, that's perfectly okay. Just knit one full round, and now we'll start doing our decrease rounds every other round. So this is how we're going to do it. The very first 2 stitches of each section, you're going to knit together. So knit 2 together, and then knit to the stitch marker. So knit 2 together, knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Including your knit 2 together, you will have 10 stitches in that section. You're going to continue with that all the way around and knit the next round. Then we will decrease again at that point. So go ahead and continue decreasing, knit 2 together, knit the next 9 stitches all the way around until you have reached your beginning stitch marker. Once you have, knit 1 full round after that. I'll meet back up with you. Okay, so now we have done 1 row of knitting, placing our stitch markers as we went. Then we did 1 decrease and 1 full round of knitting. So that makes 3 rounds into our decrease section for the crown. Now what you're going to do is every other round, do like we did the last 2. Or every round after this is going to be like the last 2 that we did. You're going to now do a decreasing round by knitting 2 together and then knit all of the rest of the stitches in that section. Move to the next section, knit the first 2 together, knit all the rest of those. That's how you decrease. And then the round after that will be a knit round where you knit all stitches. The round after that will be a decrease round. Knit 2 together, knit the rest of the stitches. Knit 2 together in the next section, knit all of the rest of the stitches. And we're going to do that. Let's say we'll meet back up at, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Go ahead and do 2 more rounds of decreases, so 4 rounds total. Do a decrease round, a knit round, a decrease round, a knit round, and we'll meet back up 5 rounds from now. So that will put us on round 8 of the decrease section. Okay, so if you've been following along with me and you are on round 8, you should have 7 stitches between your stitch markers. We're going to continue working the same way that we have been. You're going to do a decrease row where you knit 2 together and knit the remaining stitches. You're going to continue to do that until you have 3 stitches between each of your stitch markers. Now at some point you will have to switch over to either DPNs or the magic loop method, which is probably what I will do, is the magic loop method. And just divide your stitches evenly onto your DPNs or your magic loop and continue working the pattern until you are down to 3 stitches between each of those stitch markers. So I'm on a new decreasing row. This will drop me down to 6 stitches between each of the stitch markers. I will probably switch over to magic loop method on my next round, on the knitting round, just so that way I don't have to decrease and switch at the same time. So continue on this route until you are down to your 3 stitches, and then we'll finish this hat up. Okay, so just a quick how I switch over to my DPNs. Which I'm not using DPNs, I'm actually using a longer circular. Removed my starting stitch marker for the moment, and this is a knit round, so all I'm gonna do is knit over to the new needles or the new circular. And what I'm gonna do is transfer stitch markers as I come to them until I have 3 stitch markers on my first side of my magic loop. Now I'm going to knit between my 3rd stitch marker and the 4th one. Knit all of those over. I'm going to remove the 4th stitch marker. I'm going to pull this needle all the way over so that way the other end of the circular is now at the beginning of all these stitches. Flip my work over and start transferring the second half, because as you see here we have 3 stitch markers remaining, and it is evenly dispersed between both sides of this circular. So that's how I transfer over. I will add back my starting stitch marker just so that way I make sure I start and stop on the same side every time. Show you how I do that in just a second to keep from having too much hassle with it falling off. I'm going to go to 1 before the last stitch. So I'm going to keep knitting until I have 1 stitch left on the bamboo needle. Now I'm going to add that starting stitch marker back on and knit that last stitch, because if you remember I said we're going to keep going until we have 3 between our stitch markers in our sets here. So I know that that stitch marker will not be in the way being where it's at. So I'm completely off of my bamboo set, and now I can continue on with decreasing on this hat all the way down until there's 3 stitches between each of the stitch markers. I'll meet back up with you at that point. Okay, so here we are down to 3 stitches between each of those stitch markers all the way around, with the exception of this one, but that's because that's my first stitch marker, beginning and end, and you see why. There's 3 stitches there total. So the next step is to cut ourselves a tail to sew in the end. And you're going to want it at least, you know, a good 8 to 12 inches, something like that. So that way you have plenty of room to work with, just in case. And you're going to lace up your needle. And now we're just going to start plucking these stitches off one by one, removing the stitch markers as we come to them. So I'm going to take my tail here and start lifting off onto my needle with the tail thread. And I'm going to do that in the way like I would do a knit stitch. So as if to knit. That way these stitches continue to go the right direction. And now we are free from our circular knitting needles, and we have all the stitches on our tail here. And now what I generally do with this is I take my needle and thread. I stick my hand up in the project, grab that needle and thread, and kind of pinch all this together and turn it inside out. Now what I'll do is I'll stick my hand back up in the hat and start cinching this down. But by starting on the inside, I can see real clearly where it's cinched down at, and that way I know that's where I need to weave in my in here and sew up the little bit of a hole here. Now, if you so choose, you could put a pom-pom on top at this, you know, at this point. That's entirely up to you. So I'm just going to weave in the ends of this hat down at the brim and the color change and here at the top. I'll be right back after I have all of my ends wove in. Okay, so here it is. Everything is sewn in. Here's the top. And open it up. And here's the body of the hat. There you go. Okay, everyone. So this is the hat part of a set. The cowl will be out next week or the week after. These sets are my design, my own pattern, and they're sets for wings in September of 2022. So that's what these sets are for, is everybody that is making things in September for wings and donating them through Rose with Rose Likes Crochet. That's what these sets are being made for. Feel free to jump in and join us and make a set or two or whatever and send them to Rose for during the month of September for wings, that would be awesome. And if you can't, if you can donate to a local charity, that would be awesome as well. I understand that it is very expensive to ship right now, and especially if it's overseas. So this is the knitted hat part of the set. The cowl will be coming up soon, and it'll be a matching cowl. I want to thank you for watching. Be blessed, be a blessing, and bye for now.